Well, welcome to the Mayor of Money podcast series. I'm Rick Goldring, Mayor of Burlington between 2010 and 2018, and most people know me as that. But prior to serving as mayor, I had a long career in the financial services sector, helping successful business owners in the area of financial estate planning and wealth and risk management. And my career continued after my tenure as mayor with the establishment of Goldring Financial Leadership, Inc. in 2019. Now, this podcast series will feature discussion on estate and financial planning, entrepreneurship, as well as real estate and development. My guests will include expert financial planners, investment advisors, lawyers, tax accountants, economists, mortgage brokers, realtors, life insurance specialists, funeral directors, entrepreneurs, and real estate developers. On this program, you will hear insightful information that you can use in your own financial and estate planning that you will not hear anywhere else. You also hear from successful entrepreneurs sharing their journey and the wisdom they have picked up along the way. And as there is such a significant shortage of housing in the Golden Horseshoe area, and prices have increased dramatically in the last few years, I will also feature a discussion about real estate and development, and you will learn about current and future trends in real estate. Now, my guest for today, I'm really pleased to have her on the podcast with me, is Christine Brunson of Trusted Legacy. And Christine's got a fascinating business that she operates after many years in working with a trust company. Christine, welcome to the Mayor of Money podcast series. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background, your history, and how you got started in your business?
Thank you so much, Rick, for having me on the podcast today. I'm happy to share a little bit of my journey with you. So I actually started in the estate and trust industry back in 1997 with one of the bank-owned trust companies. And then I was doing primarily administration. So administering estates, trusts, powers of attorney, guardianships, and I really got my roots in the administration area. And then as I grew through that, I took on more senior roles, became a trust officer, and then started doing more and more planning. And I made several key moves through different trust companies, both through the bank-owned network and a privately owned trust company as well. And it was predominantly later years in the planning aspect of estates and trusts. And what I would say is I think having the administrative knowledge really helped me because I was able to steer people away from some of the pitfalls that they might encounter on the admin side by structuring things properly from the outset, right? So where I could see, you know what, in these particular cases, this is what I can see as the cases where things kind of fall down, or from a family dynamic standpoint, you know, you can pick out a lot of those things. You can see people headed towards some of those pitfalls. Then you can say to them, hey, listen, if we structure things this way, we've got a far better chance of having a better outcome. So that's really, I think, what my experience through the trust company industry really was, you know, admin to planning and realizing that there's a lot that can be done to help people, to help guide people to better planning.
So on the planning end, so you help people get a focus on exactly how they want their estate and their legacy to be settled. That's part of what you do.
Absolutely, it is. And you know what, because of my experience in that area as well. So I tend to find that the planning that I look at is often different than the technical side of planning that a lot of the lawyers will do. And I think that's because, you know what, lawyers are very busy. They there's a lot of firms that will do the higher amounts of, like the higher degree of planning. But there's a lot of lawyers who I think more expect that a client will come in and discuss their situation, and they'll do traditional powers of attorney and wills. But I'm always looking at really doing a full audit with people, doing some cost benefit analysis, taking a look at the fuller picture and how to put things into practice from a practical standpoint, not just the technical standpoint. I think you have to address both. I think there's a reluctancy of people to pay lawyers at their hourly rate for the practical aspect of planning. So I think there was a good market there, and that's actually what prompted me to go on my own, was lawyers telling me, you know what, you could actually have a business doing the practical side of planning, marry it up with the technical side. And what we'd love to have is just send clients with a nice letter of instruction that we can then review and provide our legal counsel to our clients without us having to do a lot of the education and communication around what is the best plan.
So you help clients get a focus, and you help them through the sensitive issues and the personal issues that may come up with regard to their legacy planning or estate planning, and you get them organized, and then they can go to their lawyer who can finalize the documentation. Is that what I'm hearing?
It is. I would say the process kind of looks like this. If I were to sit down with you today, I would say to you, Rick, what is it you really want to live and be remembered for? What does that look like? If you were to sit down and write your obituary today, what would it say about you? And when you can write that down and you can say, you know, this is what I really want to be remembered for, then I can help you reverse engineer your plan to make sure that you actually achieve that goal of being remembered for what it is you want to be remembered for. And a lot of times it does trickle into the technical aspect of planning as well. I'll give you a couple examples. There's a gentleman that I'm working for, and I am agent for himself as trustee and his lawyer. And he's got some complicated family dynamics. He's got a son who has disabilities, and those disabilities are from an intellectual standpoint. And there's been a bit of a riff, if you will, between the two of them. And he was really worried about what would happen if something happened to him first. His wife is already incapable. So we kind of changed the planning all around, and we used a trust in lifetime called an inter vivos type of trust. And it's there to make sure that the both of them are looked after during their lifetime. But we've also set aside a pool of money with insurance to have a trust for his son, because every month I'm there, I'm trying to make sure that the son has a budget, that we pay for a certain amount of his expenses on a monthly basis. And there's certain things I will go to the store and I'll pick up certain items for him, drop them off with dad, and then dad gets together, because dad's finding it harder at 89. It's harder for him to be able to go out and source all these things for his son himself. So I'm there kind of doing some of that work, and he gets to see real time how this is all going to work with his son. And I get to learn and record. So that the big part of my job is helping people organize, record, and communicate their plans. So it's not enough just to have wills and powers of attorney anymore. You really have to create a blueprint for an executor. And the reason that's really important is, you know what, years ago, and I know this being a serial executor and serial trustee and power of attorney, that kind of thing, it was much easier years ago to go into somebody's house, go through their desk and their house and find all their, financial statements and bills and that kind of thing, redirect the mail, and you would have everything you would need. But going forward, that's not the case. We have really moved into a digital environment, and even more so post-pandemic with Zoom and everything else. And the statements that you used to find are nowhere to be found. They're behind locked screens. So even just things like creating manual digital asset inventories, where is everything? How is it structured? What do you want done with these things? It's really important information for an executor to be able to do their job with any sort of efficacy, because you're gonna have to help guide them. Otherwise, you're going to be ordering back years worth of credit card statements and bank statements. That's going to give you the things you pay for. What about all the apps that you don't pay for? Where are those things communicated? Most people don't even know that a lot of the digital assets have pre-planning tools. There's actually 4 of them, but I think that will increase over time. But just what is the proper way of managing digital assets? You shouldn't be leaving passwords behind for all of your accounts, which is what most people think, right? So helping to guide people through that real practical exercise, but also how does that translate to the technical, and getting that information in front of a lawyer so that they can have a great discussion with that client.
So you just talked about a number of challenges with regard to digital assets and how we record information, how we keep information. It's changed dramatically over the last 30 years. What you just said may be a little intimidating for people when they think about it. And I'm thinking about my own situation. I've got all my passwords on my iPhone, I've got old passwords, I've got new passwords. They're all there, but you got to figure it out. So how practically can you counsel people to get all their stuff together and organize in such a way? Because it can be intimidating for people, A, the exercise administratively, and B, the emotion of it, that we all know, when we're 20, death is sort of an academic exercise that, yeah, it's going to happen, but who cares?
It's kind of
Then
funny that I'm
then you
talking
get
to
your
you about.
60s, or you get your 70s, 80s, and it's no longer an academic exercise. It's going to happen. How do you coach people to get their head around, come on, let's just get this done? You'll feel so much better, because there is so much reticence.
Yeah, it's true. And I think we need to think about this not as planning for dying, but planning for living. I don't know how many times I could tell you that when I brought somebody through this kind of planning, and when they're all done, there's a sense of relief, right? From their, like, they just kind of like the whole big breath. It's like, you know what? I feel so much better. Like I didn't even realize it was stressing me out. But when I think back about it, it was keeping me awake at night, thinking about like, oh, how's this all gonna work out? And it's funny that I'm speaking to you today, because today is the day that my book launches on Amazon as well. That's called Emerge, Be the Unmistakable Authority in Your Field. And our chapter in this compilation book that was written with Brian Tracy is called Understanding the Legacy Procrastination Effect, right? And it's that we're all kind of in one of 4 different states of procrastination. So you're either in innocence, where you're talking about like you're younger, you haven't even begun to thinking about this kind of thing, right? Or we're in the state of acceptance. We accept that we've got some assets, or we've got children that we need to plan for. And then you kind of go one of 2 ways. You either kick the can further down the road and say, I'm going to deal with it later. Or you decide to enter into a state of what we call furtherance, where we take action, right? You'll get, wills or powers of attorney in place, maybe buy some life insurance, and you figure, okay, you know what, I'm content. No matter what stage you're in, you're usually content with what you've done up to that point. But the 4th state is the one that so few people actually ever entered into. It's what I like to refer to as a state of abundance. When you actually plan with great certainty around things, and when you've got everything kind of put together and mashed together the way it should be. And what I feel is that most people will never get to a state of abundance unless somebody actually holds their hand and pulls them up through the other stages and gets them to that state. Because this is not something that we were ever taught in school. We weren't taught it when we got a job. And I can tell you, I've had 3 children, and there was never a fairy that showed up at the bedside of my bed when I had the children and said, here's all the things you're going to need to do. But having somebody that can actually walk you through it, because I think when you're staring down that barrel, as you said, it looks really daunting to you and you don't even know where to start. But if you could have somebody guide your hand, take your hand, and actually connect you and say, here's the things we're going to do. And you give me your timeline. How long do you want to take to get this in place? I've got an organizer. It took me, 25 years of experience to develop it. It's 100 pages long, but not every one of those 100 pages is applicable to everybody. Not everybody's going to leave behind, sperm, ova, gamete, or cord blood. Not everybody's written a book, so I've designed it to be really giving an executor a full blueprint to work from. But it takes some time to actually disseminate exactly what information is going to be applicable. So I think it's almost like an interviewing kind of thing, right? Because if you give somebody the organizer, the chances are they're not going to fill it out. But if you can actually engage them in conversation and you can get it filled out, I think that's a better outcome. And because I know that, I've actually engaged somebody within our community, within the Burlington community, about developing an AI-powered chatbot that would be able to have that discussion with you real time, interview style, to extrapolate that information from you, get it recorded into a booklet, and then PDF it to you so that you can just fill in the other details, like the passwords for your hard devices, like your cell phones and stuff that you need to leave those for. But I think it's a better outcome for people. So, you know, technology is great. It's come a long way and it's going to help us in the future. Are we there yet? No, not necessarily. But those of us who have the experiential knowledge, we're looking towards finding ways of helping people overcome that hurdle of procrastination. So I'm committed to that. I'm hoping that, you know, in the near future, we'll be able to have something like that for people to help guide them. And if it's something else, maybe you enjoy maybe there's an activity that you really enjoy. Maybe we can tie this to activities that we do enjoy doing. So I'll tell you that I've been reached out to through several people in California, because I am part of a community online called Clubhouse. It's an app. And there was a young man who he was 2 weeks shy of his 50th birthday and died of COVID. And he had none of this done, but left behind an amazing legacy. And it's really prompted a lot of the people on this app to say, I'm not prepared. Right? If something like that happened to me, I know I'm not prepared and my family's not prepared, and I don't want to leave them unprepared. I don't want that to be their last memory of me going, oh God, why didn't they tell me where everything was? You know, that's not so she's committed to me. She said, you know what, I really want to get this done. And I said, give me an activity that you really like. She goes, I like wine on a Friday night. And I said, then you know what, we'll get on Zooms. And for the next number of weeks, until she set the end of the year as her goal. So for the next number of weeks, we'll get online and we'll bring a glass of wine and we'll actually work our way through this organizer to make sure she's got it done.
Well, whatever it takes.
I believe you have to tie it to something that's pleasurable for people.
Yeah. So two of the critical documents that virtually everybody has to have is a will and a power of attorney. And, you know, with a will, there's an executor attached to that, and with a power of attorney, well, by definition, it is a document that designates somebody else to act on your behalf under different circumstances. How do you guide people into coming up with the right executor and the right attorney?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion points around that, and you know, people think, well, I'm going to name so and so because they're the oldest child. But I really want to get people to start thinking about the role of executor as a job. And I don't think I've ever come across anywhere on any job site, Indeed or otherwise, where the job posting said, are you the oldest child? Great, then you can have this job. So there's more that should be going into your decision making other than just, is it the oldest child, or is it this child? Or it is a job. You have to look at people's skill sets and make sure they have the right skill set. What I say about my role is that my role specifically is I call myself a bit of a Swiss Army knife because I think that this role really means that you have to have a financial awareness and background. You really should have a legal background. There is an element of taxation as well that you must know when you're doing this work. And then the final one is being a bit of a social worker, a bit of somebody that's able to deal with people's emotions. I get accused all the time in my own family of being the one that is the steady, right? They think that nothing phases me. It's just that I've done this role so many times that I've been able to remove the emotion from it. And I can actually work through it just systematically now, right? But finding that those person, maybe it's not even somebody within your family, right? Or maybe it is somebody within your family that you recognize that could do this job, but they're going to need some help, some additional assistance. And that was another reason, the genesis behind Trusted Legacy was that I recognized that, hey, only 2% of the population ever actually names a trust company, and 98% of people actually name family members or friends. And those people are woefully unprepared for what lies ahead. And so I thought if I could provide them with some assistance from an agent standpoint, right, where they can appoint me as agent for executor or agent for power attorney or agent for trustee, I can really help them complete their role, take on the burden of administration, and let them deal with some of the more social working things within the family if they're, deemed really good at dealing with other members of the family, or maybe they have a specific skill set. Maybe they're good on the legal side or the taxation side, but oftentimes people are not that well-rounded Swiss Army knife that have access and knowledge in all those areas. So that's where I can really be a help and assistance to them by rounding it all out.
You are a Swiss Army knife. You talk about all sorts of different things, and you have so many different experiences, which lends itself to you being able to provide even better service than you did 10 years ago to the people that you're working with. What are are there any books, personal or professional development books, that have guided you in your personal journey along the way?
I'm still learning, Rick. I'm 2 years into entrepreneurship, and I'm still learning. I would say the books that I picked up, one of the very first books that I read was a Jim Rohn book called 12 Pillars, which had 12 principles to guide people in self-development. I'm a huge believer in education and self-development. It's one of the major reasons why I'm on Clubhouse, is that there is so much free education on that app. And I think originally the founders of it actually designed it to be a vehicle, a vessel to provide a mode of audio transmission for comedians, for singers and entertainers. But what it really actually morphed into was this entire network, global network of entrepreneurs. And so I really, I've gotten on there, I've met a lot of people. I believe in the knowledge and power of networking with people. And so I've immersed myself in as many possible networks as I possibly can with other entrepreneurs to learn from their expertise, right? They say the best thing to do when you're learning is to find somebody who's already figured it out, somebody who's already at the point where you want to be, and take them on, ask them if they'll take you on as a mentor and or a mentee, and ask them about their experiences, ask them to tell you about the failures, right? Because they learn far more from the failures than they did from any of the wins that they got, right? So the failures you'll learn far more from that. So asking them about their experiences and really learning from them. And that's what I've done. I've reached out to them, and you know what? You'd be surprised how many of them are so willing to get with you and actually have that conversation about what their wins have been, what their failures have been, if they were to do it all over again, how they would change it, and especially these days where we're talking about so much social media. There's so many different platforms of social media, LinkedIn and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. I mean, it's hard to be a master of all of them. So getting with people who are masters in any one of those is really good knowledge and skill sets to have. The other one I would say is the one that most entrepreneurs talk about is Think and Grow Rich. I think that's an amazing book as well. But finding time to read when you're an entrepreneur and you're building other businesses, as I am, and you're writing books, it's sometimes a bit of a challenge. But I do what I can to try and put aside some time every day for personal development.
That's great. This is great. I've really enjoyed our discussion on the podcast. You're to be commended for what you've accomplished in the last couple of years since you established your business. You have a clear direction of where you're going. You have a clear direction of the value that you offer the people that you serve. This has been very, very insightful. And I want to thank you for taking time to be on the Mayor of Money podcast. And that's Christine Brunson from Trusted Legacy. And her website is trustedlegacy.ca, where you can get all sorts of other information. Now, you mentioned the book that you're part of, a compilation with Brian Tracy. And what's the name of the book?
It's called Emerge, Be the Unmistakable Authority in Your Field.
And you have a chapter in there.
We have a chapter in there. There was 30 chapters written, and it's all people who are writing about being the authority in their field. And what we're talking about is being the authority on legacy. I mean, we didn't even touch on, the importance of philanthropy and all of that. That's also part of what I do, strategic
So
philanthropy.
we can bring you back on again and we can have that discussion, which I would look forward to. So
Absolutely. You know what it's like. I mean, willpower is actually running this month. We're almost all the way through the willpower month, but I'm a very big advocate. I'm a member of CAGP, the Canadian Association of Gift Planners, and I'm also a participant in the willpower campaign. So happy to have those conversations. It is. I mean, when you're thinking about planning a legacy, there's so many facets to planning it. And, I think you have to look at it from all the different aspects. And that's a whole different conversation. We talk about that strategic philanthropy, but, we're all going to give some money back to the government at the end of the day. And it's deciding whether you want to give it to the government or you want to give it to something that's maybe near and dear to your heart.
There are all sorts of ways you could redirect money that would normally be going to tax. You can redirect to charity and make a significant impact. And you can decide where the money, where you want your tax dollars to go, as opposed
but
to
remember, you've got to have a will and you've got to have power of attorney if you're going to direct it yourself.
Exactly.
The government doesn't direct any money to charity on your behalf if you die without a will.
So thanks to Christine Brunson of Trusted Legacy, and I thank all of you for watching or listening to the Merit Money podcast. I look forward to hearing from you. And if you have a guest or you have a topic you want to see further discussion on, please let me know. I'm Rick Goldring, the Merit Money. I will see you on the next episode. Stay positive and test negative.